After 5 years, the Slayer returns, but this time the battlefield looks a little bit different. What's happening, guys? Welcome back to another video, and it's finally time to talk about Doom: The Dark Ages, one of my most anticipated games of the year. Bethesda gave me early access to the game, I've rolled credits, and I'm ready to break down the good, the bad, and the gory. And there's a lot of gory. But is Doom still really all about the gore? Because this time around, the motto for Doom: The Dark Ages is stand and fight instead of rip and tear, and that's not just marketing talk. You can actually feel that in the gameplay. But before we talk about the gameplay, let's talk about the story, because up until now, Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal have both had stories that, for the most part, just kind of take a back seat a little bit. Obviously, you've got plenty of lore in the codexes for both games, but neither of those really had substantial campaigns with full cutscenes and storytelling like you'd get from any big story-driven FPS. Doom: The Dark Ages takes a different approach, with a story that's much more front and center and really good. The Dark Ages is a prequel to Doom 2016, with King Novik and the Night Sentinels fighting back against Prince Azrak, a demon hell-bent on taking out the Slayer because he's the only thing the demons fear other than him, and finding the Heart of Argent to really unleash his power. At the very start of the game, the Argenta partnered with the Makers to make the Slayer their own personal demon-killing super weapon and stop the demon hordes and Prince Azrak, and everything kind of unwinds from there. Now, obviously, I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but they've done a really good job with the story here. There are some solid twists along the way, the cutscenes and voice acting are awesome, the writing is good, it's really a nice backdrop to the real star of the show and the reason that people love Doom: the gameplay. And thankfully, the gameplay doesn't just support the story, it elevates it and pushes the iconic Doom formula into some brutal new territory, with a little bit of a caveat. As expected, the Dark Ages is all about the gunplay, and you've got a huge lineup of weapons to choose from, everything from classics like the combat shotgun all the way to new medieval additions to the lineup like the chain shot, a literal cannonball gun, or my personal favorites, the Ravager or the Pulverizer, two different weapons that use crushed up skulls for ammo, and I can't think of anything quite as Doom as a skull gun. And just like its predecessors, Doom: The Dark Ages also adds plenty of customization to the whole experience, and your mileage may vary depending on the weapon when it comes to the depth of the customization, but collecting gold, rubies, and wraithstones through the campaign lets you unlock different perks and abilities that give your weapons a little bump and change the way they play. And it's way more than just the guns. You've got different unlockable customization for the shield saw, plus different melee weapons you unlock along the way, and then there is the crossbow, which is really more of a nuke than anything else. It's kind of like your ult. But in modern Doom style, these weapons aren't just there as extra options if you want to change the way you play. It has this kind of Guitar Hero style flow to it that we saw with Eternal in particular, where the visual cues let you know what weapons to match with what enemies. Glowing energy shields are for pulse weapons, large crowds of fodder enemies go down easy with the Pulverizer, your standard ranged weapons damage armor and shields until they're glowing red hot. The entire combat system has this nice natural flow to it, and that's when you whip out the shield saw. The shield is the central feature of Doom: The Dark Ages. The entire game is centered around using it to block, to parry, to activate levers, to get it stuck in walls and grapple over to it. This is the Swiss Army knife of Doom guy gear, and it's a blast. Just like Doom Eternal and Doom 2016, The Dark Ages just keeps getting better the further you get into the game. You unlock the shield saw, add new weapons into the mix, and start getting into that flow of parrying, shooting, and busting up armor with a few glory kills along the way. But speaking of the glory kills, that's the caveat. It's actually one of the biggest drawbacks of Doom: The Dark Ages compared to something like Eternal. Glory kills just feel like they're kind of few and far between. Basically, the way a glory kill is activated is by jumping above an enemy before pulling off a finisher, and that activates a unique animation for each enemy. Sawing a demon's head in half, sawing an entire demon in half. You kind of know the drill. And for many boss enemies that increase your total armor, health, or ammo along the way, you get this little extra flair there with the finishing move, but these don't really have all that much variety, and unless you're intentionally trying to pull off a glory kill, you probably won't run into them too often in the normal course of gameplay. Now, at first, that was a little bit of a disappointment. I mean, it's Doom. It's all about the ripping and tearing, right? And then I remembered that since the beginning, the Dark Ages has been all about standing and fighting against your enemies. They've been saying that since really Trailer 1, and the more you play, the more weapons and mechanics you unlock. And I can totally see a case where if glory kills were packed in the way they were in Eternal, the whole game just could end up feeling overwhelming. That said, I'm still conflicted because on one hand, I think the gameplay of what it has created here with the Dark Ages is fantastic. It's more controlled and grounded and slower than Eternal, which I think is an improvement, but still intense and fast-paced enough with all of the different combat mechanics to not feel like a step back. The shield saw is really the cornerstone of the entire game, and taking out some of those glory kills kind of lets that shine, but on the flip side, the shield saw is the entire cornerstone of the game. I'd have loved to see a wider variety of gory glory kills with animations of limbs getting sawed off or waves of fodder enemies getting sliced in half. Adding a little bit more brutality in there versus some of the pretty standard melee finishers would have been appreciated. That said, where the game lacks in glory kills, it makes up for in gameplay variety, because on top of the normal running and gunning FPS action you would expect from Doom, it's also packing dragonflight combat and enormous 30-story mech fights. You're dodging shots from turrets in the dragon fights and chasing down gold dragons if you want to get some extra cash, or bobbing and weaving between punches and rock'em sock'em fights with giant demons. It's very solid stuff. But those dragon and mech levels did come at a cost, because unlike Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, the Dark Ages does not have any kind of multiplayer mode. This is a single-player shooter through and through, and the team thought that it was more worthwhile to pack in the dragon and mech sections instead of a multiplayer mode. And honestly, that's a decision I can get behind, because we're in a time where multiplayer shooters are a dime a dozen, with more coming out every day, and having a dedicated multiplayer mode for a single-player shooter probably isn't really gonna move the needle. I think at the end of the day, players are going to look back and remember the variety in the Dark Ages way more than they'd ever have remembered a multiplayer mode, so I'm gonna chalk that up as a win. Plus, you've still got some good replay value here without having any kind of multiplayer element. Nearly each of the 22 chapters in the game is packing plenty of collectibles to find, gold to hunt down, and secret areas to discover for the people that are wanting a little extra scavenger hunt mixed in. We're talking weapon skins and toys scattered across the campaign. Now, the way I typically play Doom is I do one playthrough just naturally flowing through the game and rolling credits, and if I find some secrets along the way, then so be it, and that's what I've done at the time of this review, and I would estimate that took me roughly 10 to 12 hours, and then after I roll credits, I'll double back, do another playthrough, and really take the time to dig in and find everything there is to find in each level. Just guesstimating based on my gut feeling, I would imagine you're looking at around 35 to 40 hours to see everything the game has to offer, which is a solid amount of content. It's a main campaign that has good pacing and doesn't overstay its welcome, but that has plenty of gas left in the tank if you're into a Collecticon style scavenger hunt that can add that extra layer of depth to this kind of an experience. But above all else is the look and the sound of the world that it continues to build with the modern take on the Doom franchise. The Dark Ages is some of the doomiest Doom you are ever going to get. You've got some techno-futuristic meets medieval gothic horror architecture combined with gorgeous hellscapes packed with horrifying demons that you're mowing down with machine guns, bludgeoning with flails, and of course, barrel stuffing with a super shotgun, all while this intense heavy metal soundtrack is blaring in the background. For the adrenaline junkies looking for a testosterone-packed FPS overflowing with guts and gore, Doom the Dark Ages is absolutely going to check all of those boxes, and it might be a step back from the literal endless ripping and tearing of Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, but standing and fighting with the shield saw is a worthwhile trade-off that makes this game stand out from its two most recent predecessors, and all three are very good. But of course, those are just my thoughts on the game, and again, big thanks to Bethesda for giving early access to the game for review. I've rolled credits on the main campaign, but there's still plenty of collectibles to unlock and levels to 100%, so I'm going to keep chipping away at this over the summer, and we might have a big lineup of releases on the way, but I'm always going to be able to make time for a little shield saw action. Of course, if you're new here, you like what you see and what you hear, hit that subscribe button for videos like this every week and gaming news shorts throughout the week to keep you in the loop, and I'll catch you on the next one.